All right, we are live. Mr. John Welbourn, welcome to the future of fitness.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. I've been following you for a long time, long time. So I've been looking forward to this, and for people who don't know, I'm just going to get a quick synopsis of who you are, and feel free to, you know, change up whatever I say here. But you've been around the performance training environment for quite some time, and you were an NFL player. Were you a left tackle? No, you're right. Anyway, it was about 7 or 8 years, right? You played for the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Pats.
Yeah,
You
no,
started
I played
okay,
10, ended
10.
up, yeah, so I was a 9-year starter, and then I went for my 10th year to the Patriots and got hurt in training camp, and that was the end of it.
Yeah, impressive. I mean, there's a lot. That's a whole 2 hour episode right there. But the thing I really got to know you for was CrossFit Football.
hmm
So back when I was, started in the CrossFit world around '08, I saw a lot of kind of specialty certifications come across, and I regret not doing yours because out of all the ones I did, it was one of the few I didn't. But I kept hearing from people it was the most comprehensive, the best one, the most adaptable, basically, kind of any training modality that you want to do within your gym. So heard nothing but good things. And then you guys have, evolved into power athlete. So there's a lot going on there. But for people maybe on this podcast who aren't familiar with you, John, give us a little bit of your overall background, how you describe it, and then we'll take it from there.
Where to start? Grew up in Southern California, youngest of 3 boys, played a ton of sports, got into martial arts pretty early, ended up being pretty decent at football and liking weights, and got a ton of scholarship offers. Went to UC Berkeley to play football on a scholarship, graduated in 4 years with a degree in rhetoric, did my master's work in my 5th year, and then I was planning to go to law school. I got drafted, figured I'd play for a year or two and then go to law school, and that turned into 10. And when I retired, I was sitting on the couch rehabbing, and I got a phone call from Greg Glassman, CEO of CrossFit at the time, and asked me if I would come over and help them develop their technology on how to train athletes. So I had accurately assessed that CrossFit was not an athletic form of training based upon the model I have of athleticism. Bilateral hip hinging in a sagittal plane is not athleticism. If you're a gymnast who's displaying, athletic movement, it fits within the paradigm. But in terms of field sports, there's no transverse plane, there's no frontal, there's no rotation. I mean, it was really lacking in how it was. And the problem was there was strength was just another element of fitness. So I show up and start programming multiple workouts and put periodized strength templates into CrossFit. So before us, one day you might come in and it's a 5x5 back squat, and the next day you're going to do a 5K row. So for us, we came in and I was like, dude, if we want to make people strong, you're going to have to use a periodized strength conditioning template. So I entered that into the CrossFit space and just translated, supersets and giant sets and clusters and all that stuff into conditioning metcons. So all I did was I just took standard strength conditioning principles and just translated into CrossFit speak, and then dumped it on it, and people loved it, even though they were thumbing their nose at, conventional strength conditioning. So it was exactly what we were giving them. And, I was at a meeting with Glassman, and he was about a dozen drinks in. Right before he went face down in the soup, he screamed at me, "You virally destroyed CrossFit by convincing everybody they needed to be strong." And I was like, sweet, thanks. That's a great thing to tell people. They need to be stronger. Strength is an adaptation. I mean, if you're going to live a long life, it helps to be a strong individual to live a long life. So we worked with CrossFit for a long time. I had a really tumultuous relationship because what I was teaching was juxtaposed from what they were teaching. So the fact that I had CrossFit Football was very predatory on their brand, and I was always surprised they let me do it. So, but at some point that kind of came to an end. And I'd started Power Athlete years before because we were doing a lot of military contracting and different stuff. And then we just kind of seamlessly stepped over into what we were doing.
For those who maybe are indoctrinated, why was periodized strength programming so against the grain for what CrossFit was at the time of the typical definition, right, of constantly varied functional movements performed at high intensity? Like, what was the rub?
If your goal is to get strong, constantly varied movements performed at high intensity is not how you get strong. I mean, think about Milo's bull. Milo grew, he got bigger, the bull got bigger, he kept picking the bull up. It's not like one day you picked up sheep and the next day you picked up a bull and the next day you picked up a rock. So if you want to get strong, strength is an adaptation of, to quote Shawshank Redemption, time and pressure. It's like a study of geology. I mean, it's the same with strength. You have to do it with consistency and effort and, do a little bit more today than you did yesterday. And it's something that you have to do. You can't just randomly program strength into a template and hope you get strong. And I
Yeah.
mean, this is one-on-one physiology. The problem is Glassman and the, powers that be at CrossFit had thumbed their noses at, traditional strength conditioning. I was in a talk where he said, sports scientists and strength conditioning has contributed nothing to the field. So I was like, what about VO2 max? Well, it was just, it was outlandish things. You think about Dr. Evil, talking about his dad, how he invented the question mark, thought kumquats were lazy. I mean, it's just kind of insane. So, but Glassman did have an incredible, effect on the world where he did more to put barbells in people's hands. What we did is we just focused it. And, before us, it was just one workout in a day. And we started programming multiple workouts. You can't walk into a CrossFit gym that doesn't have a strength and a conditioning template now. And that came from us. So we virally destroyed it, as I was told.
It's, I look back, and this is just one man's experience too on the early days of CrossFit too, where I was hook, line, and sinker, man. Like I was in, I would get in loud verbal fights with people at a bar about, my modality versus their personal training modality, because I was gym owner. I was just a confident, and everything was just, I joke about this all the time. Like I was at the point where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I could cure anything with CrossFit and paleo, like any disease, any, humanitarian issue. If you just give me those two things, like that's all I need. Right. And I think there was a lot of, as people got into CrossFit, there was a lot of novice level trainees, right? Who, yeah, you could throw them into a class, have them do constantly very functional movements performed at high intensity with a little bit of strength here and there. They're going to get stronger, but to a certain point, right?
Well, I mean, if you take people that are detrained and they do anything, they could play a snare drum for 3 hours a week, and they're going to get better. So just because something works doesn't mean it's optimal. And were people getting in shape? Yeah. You give them a paleo diet, which is a restrictive diet, and you have them monitor their calories. So they're eating in caloric restriction, and you're basically burning them to the ground every single day. And, people got in shape. I think if you want to move past that novice effect, do people need to be in shape? 100%. Do they need a base level fitness? Yeah. Do they need GPP? 100%. Problem was, if Glassman had gone back and read some of this stuff about GPP and SPP and some of this training, he would have understood that you can't have a sport at GPP. GPP is general physical preparedness. It's the template that you use to get somebody in moderate shape to move on to more advanced training. So I see this and I'm like, this is crazy. But he was, he is an extremely polarizing individual. He's an incredible speaker, and he found people that were looking for a change and looking for something different. And the standard model was broken. So I think it hit it right at the right time.
One of the things I appreciated, which I found to be novel about Glassman at the time, especially, was that he gave it all away for free. Like the CrossFit Journal, like everything. He didn't put it behind a paywall, right? He just threw it out in the world. Have you seen that? Like, because you've been in this world of strength and fitness for a long time. Have you ever seen anything like that? Like what he did, either through your history of training or nowadays? Like, are people just giving it away like that?
Well, if somebody gives you something for free, that's not the product. You're the product. If you think about, like, I don't know, when Gmail started, they're giving away this Gmail thing. No, they're giving it away because you're the product. So I think he took the exact same approach, and that the people endeared him. And I saw it too. We gave away free programming for years. The amount of goodwill that we created by giving away free program catapulted and has really supported our business still to this day, just for that goodwill. And the other cool part was we gave away free programming, so people did it. And I traveled the world for the next 9 years and met, thousands of people that had done the program that all had a similar result. So, I mean, if you want to test the efficacy of something, give it away for free and then travel and meet all the people that are doing it and let them give you the results unsolicited. And we were very lucky in that it allowed me to formulate my thoughts on strength conditioning and performance training and everything. I mean, it really allowed me to build the model I use at Power Athlete, just for the fact that I had more data points than anybody else on the planet. I mean, the only other person that did that would have been like Kelly Starrett, where Kelly had a program and he was putting people in, giving it away for free and then traveling and meeting all the people. So it really it's extremely helpful. I just don't know how you would ever put the lightning back in the bottle, or more importantly, strike new lightning, just because that time was such a different time than this today. And at the time, people, like, online training wasn't really a thing. So you could go to this website, give it for free. And, when we became more specialized, I put everything behind a paywall, not because I was trying to make money, but because I wanted the information. I wanted the data. I wanted the results. And I couldn't get people to consistently give me results for free. So I had to charge them, which seems counterintuitive. Hey, if I'm getting you program, just give me all the results. No, I had to charge them to get the results. And that was a strange realization. So now that's allowed us to, hyper jump. The programs that we put out are just, they're really good for their intended usage. And I think it's because we just have more data points. I think what most people do with programs, hey, I did this program. This is my bodybuilding routine. So I'm going to post it up and everybody should get better. When I don't buy into that. Just because it works for you, I mean, you can be an outlier. I think so. You have to be able to have a ton of data points, be able to give it. And what I end up doing is creating different principles associated with power athletes that were based more on, primal patterns, movement, step, squat, lunge. I mean, all the things that we do, all the tenets of our program, all the pillars, and all that came from just giving away free programming and then going and meeting all the people and then really just the evolution. So it wasn't like all of a sudden I kicked in the door. I was like, we're getting free, we're charging people for programming. Now we gave it away for years, and it really allowed me to do and create really an interesting system.
And that's a nice segue. Give us an idea of, as a business, what is Power Athlete nowadays? Now in Q2 of 2024, what are the legs it stands on? And give us some insight.
We do direct to consumer programming. So we work with people and then we work with groups. So, I was on a call earlier today for a group in Canada, fire department that's trying to hire a power athlete to come and do their education, provide programming and really just mentorship for their guys. We do that, at development group. So we work with Naval Special Warfare's development group. We do the exact same thing for them. So we do individuals, we do large groups, we do education. And then I have a couple projects that I do personally. Right now I have 3 clients. I have a 72-year-old billionaire that I'm trying to put some muscle on. I have the top Brazilian jiu-jitsu players in the world that I'm getting ready for ADCC. And then I got the guys at development group. So I have a really interesting private catalog of clients.
Yeah, it seems like,
and then there's thousands of people that are checking daily programs that we interact with. So, and then the education piece, and we have certified coaches. We'll do a big event every year that should be coming up here in September.
Yeah, and you got a podcast. It seems to me like you're having a pretty good time.
Yeah. It's going well. So, no, it's been fun. It's been impactful, and as the market continues to pivot. I was just reading some marketing stuff today, and it's this marketing stuff in terms of how to direct to consumer, internet, social media. This stuff's changing by the minute with AI. And so, somebody left a question the other day, what happens when AI replaces Johnny? And I will figure that piece out. But people are trying to do these things. I just think the issue with the AI is all it has is what's available. It just basically curates what's on the internet already. If stuff doesn't exist on the internet, it can't make it up. Not to say it can't, but it would have to go in and I would have to give it all of the parameters to design what we do. So I don't know. I'm curious to see where this whole thing takes us.
Yeah, me too. It's something I talk about once a day, probably. And I don't even know. I don't know shit about AI, from a technical standpoint. But I talk to a lot of people who do. A lot of strong technical minds within the industry, and everybody's kind of up in the air still. And I think the only answer you can say is where is this going? Is I don't know. And if anyone says that they do know, then they're kind of full of
shit.
And, yeah. I wanted to touch on kind of meaty topics and go a lot of different directions, but I was talking to Matt from your team in preparation for this, and something about the future of performance, right? We just touched on a little bit on technology. We talked about business models ever shifting in our industry. We talked about consumers, market expanding, shrinking, who's actually participating in health and fitness. It's dynamic, I guess, and more dynamic than any time in my 17-year career being in this industry. So when you look at the future of performance, maybe paint us a picture. I'm going to give it a 5-year time horizon. Where do you think the business of performance, the science of performance, all this is going? What's your vision?
I think we're stuck in analysis by paralysis. I think there's too much information. And I think what's going to happen as we get farther and farther down this road, the people that can deliver something simply and easily are going to be the most successful ones. When I look at, performance and strength conditioning and all the stuff that people are putting out, there's so much nuance to it. But I always go back to, what can people execute? Let's say I got 5,000 dudes that are in their garage, 6 a.m., wife and kids, all these things that they have to do, get to a job. What can they execute easily, well, and have a high degree of proficiency? So that's where I see this thing going. I think that for all our advancements in, convenience, why is it that nobody has any time to do anything? Like, I got an iPhone that does everything, and I have fucking no time to do anything. So I think what it comes down to is people have very, very small windows because we're so busy. So being able to provide a really good service that's concise and not full of a lot of bullshit and a lot of fluff, and getting people in and out, getting them results, and then managing them, answering their questions, and hopefully creating community along the way. So that's pretty much been my mission for the last 12 years, to just try to deliver high-end quality stuff, without a ton of nonsense and fluff, and just get people moving in the right direction, and then give them markers for improvement.
John, from I'm just writing notes on questions I ask here, but the technology aspect of training, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to lift the weight, right? No technology is going to help you do that. But is there anything, and technology in this industry trends come and go so quickly. I mean, 3-4 years ago, we were talking about connected home fitness. Like it was it. Like, that's it. That was the end of the industry. Gyms are dead, right? That's not true. So when you look at like maybe technology that you guys are starting to adopt, I think of stuff like, from a equipment basis, like, electromagnetic resistance, things that are more convenient in a smaller room, wearables, of course, there's so many of them, things like velocity-based training, force plates, like stuff like that. Like, what do you guys see as useful, and what do you see as fluff?
I think the force plates are incredible. We have them, but I only use them with our high-level athletes. I mean, does a mom need to come in and jump on force plates? She could. Do I think that she needs to? Probably not. So I use, it really comes down to who is the athlete and what are they trying to accomplish. I'm trying to get my guys ready for ADCC 2024, the biggest grappling tournament in the world. And their margin of error is so small that we pull out all the stops. We do lactate testing. I monitor how much zone 2 recovery they're getting. I monitor their sessions, how much food they're eating, all of their PRs and all the stuff that they do in the gym. And it's because those individuals have to be ready to perform on a given day at their highest level. A mom who just wants to be strong enough to be able to carry multiple bags of groceries, or a 47-year-old dad who doesn't want to have a dad bod, does he need force plates and does he need velocity-based training and all that? No, he doesn't. And I think what happens is when you create that level of complexity, there's a stickiness that trainers use to force the client and the athlete to be sticky to them, because, well, if I do all this specialized stuff, nobody does this. Where are you going to find somebody else that has me? So it really just comes down to, survivability. For now, they are trying to, keep their clients close to them. I was out at Sornix this weekend, and one of the guys that got up and presented was, trains athletes, and he has like a million different of these movements. And I was like, man, our movement catalog is very, very small in the grand scheme of things. I mean, some people have thousands of movements. Like, it's all based off of X, Y, and Z axis. Axes of rotation for the hips, what they can do in their upper body. There's really 7 things that our body can do, and then when you start incorporating transverse, frontal, and sagittal planes, now you have an infinite amount of things to do. How you challenge those individuals is going to be really based upon you, your creativity, and what your athletes can do well. And that's the biggest issue, is I need people to move well under load. If you can't move well under load, I will find a way for you to move well under load. So let's give you an example. If you have a back injury and any form of axial loading shuts you down and you can't back squat, but all I can do is back squat you for your legs because it's all I have, then I'm kind of screwed. We have a belt squat, have a pretty cool leg press. So, I mean, just being able to have some different modalities and different pieces of equipment available to you, because every athlete's slightly different. And it's called the principle of specificity, where I just need you to move well. Whatever that load is going to be determined on you and what you have going on. So being able to kind of deliver a customized program, more so not one that's so rigid. Well, this is what we do and this is what we all do. If you don't have this, then, you can't train with us. So I think it just comes down to malleability. Can you adjust the program to fit the individual? Do you understand the tenets of, physiology where, you're going to bring in dad, he's been lifting 3 weeks and you're like, great, 1 RMs, 10, 10 by 1 RM. No, fucking, I see that stuff and it's like, dude, it's ridiculous. You have to get people up to a certain strength level. You have to progress them and you have to be smart and then look at them as not clients for the month, but we've had people that have followed our training programs for 10, 12 years and they periodize through different programs and they move. I mean, when I look at the names, I'm like, God damn, this guy's been with us for a decade. And I get on the phone and we'll do consultations and this guy's like, yep, year 10, year 12. And I think that longevity, that stickiness isn't because we're using a ton of technology. It's because the programming works and it's good. So I do like force plates. We do lactate testing, but it really all of that stuff is really just the tip of the spear where now I have, these high level athletes and I have to try to get them ready for the average person. They just need to be able to do the basics and do them uncommonly well.
John, do you guys still do coaching and trainer education? Is that still part of your business?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We have a methodology. And then after they finish the methodology, they come here to Austin and actually test for their certification in person. So yeah, it's good. For the people that do it and the people that make it through, they are excellent and we fail a decent amount of people. I'm always blown away when people show up and, because I don't want to fail anybody. I mean, they've spent money, they show up, they do all this and not see them put their best foot forward and fail is usually pretty hard. But I'm never surprised that people, just fuck it, I'll show it up. It was like the CrossFit level 1. If I just show up and I have a pulse, I'm going to get a certificate. And we tell people that's not the case.
Have you seen, this is something that's come up on this show and in conversations over the past, I would say 2 to 3 years, but what do you think about the state of the coaching and training industry? Like I've seen, it's kind of undeniable, like the trend you see, a lot of trainers, especially young ones coming into the industry, they're multiple, like they have their Instagram channel, right? So they're trying to kind of make a presence, maybe make some money on that side of thing, but they're also training in person. But they don't seem to really not too many of them seem to have a real interest in staying in the industry for a long time. Like my fear is that it's slipping into the gig economy, where people will take a major certification, they'll stick around for a while, they'll go do something else. Like when you look at the state of the coaching and trainer industry, like what's your take? Are you hopeful, positive? Do you think it's shrinking? What's your take?
I think there's always going to be good coaches. There's always going to be people that are just really average. So I did a talk this weekend at Sornex, and part of my talk was on authenticity. And part of that authenticity is really interesting in that most of what people say and do and believe are not the opinions and thoughts or not their opinions and thoughts. So what people do, and I really think when people don't know what to do, let's say they get in the strength conditioning world, we'll use that as an example. They don't know what they believe because they haven't done the work to get there. So what they do is they listen and then they thatch this like armor of thought, let's say. And then that's where they start speaking from, that armor of thought. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it could be a good thing because then they get to try on, it's like going to test driving cars. They get to like test drive different ideas. They get to, say this and, does this work? When I put this out to the world, what's the response? So they get to try on a lot of things. The problem is it's not them, but it's core. It's just not. So the reason that things are authentic or inauthentic is because people don't really say or believe what they're talking about. Not because they don't believe it, just because they have no foundation and no background to be able to say it. I was very fortunate in that I played in the NFL for a decade. So I played at the highest level. I trained with world-class coaches. I tapped out when I got injured, and when Glassman hit me up about working with them, I didn't really know what I believed. I knew what the people I trained with believed, and I had the different systems and things that I had found within my own training that I thought were real important pieces. And I had the opportunity to put out programming, test all my thoughts, then travel the world and meet the people that were doing the programs and get the results. And there was a lot of things that sucked. There were a lot of things that were good and really helped me hone who I am because I just had more opportunity to do it. So, I mean, today I know exactly who I am. I know exactly what I believe, and I know how this program works. So that feeling of being authentic builds strength, and people are attracted to strength. I think people are repelled from weakness. And we see, in today's present culture, I mean, bring it out a little bit more when things sound really whiny and insane. And you hear people making these just preposterous claims and this, and it's like, for non-crazy people, you just kind of move back away from it. And you're like, oh, these people are crazy. Like, this is inauthentic. This is weakness. And then when you hear somebody who's authentic and strong, people are drawn to them. And the analogy I gave is I went to go hear Jordan Peterson speak last month, or more, 2 months ago. And he got up and, Tuesday night, 7,000 people at the Moody Center. Jordan Peterson gets up, and instead of spending a few minutes and being like, hey, I'm the most enlightened thinker of the 21st century, as anointed by Joe Rogan. I'm just going to drop you right in the middle and let you see my thought process. So buckle up and hang on. He didn't do that. He just got out there and just started speaking. And it was 45, 50 minutes of verbal masturbation. And then at the end, everybody stood up and cheered with a standing ovation. And I was looking around and I was like, I got a pretty high IQ. I went to Berkeley, rhetoric major. I read, I teach, I do this stuff. I'm a modern rhetorician. Like, I've read all the stuff that he, and I'm a huge fan of his. And I was like, this was some fucking nonsense. But why were people cheering? Why were people so excited for this moment? Because of the authenticity of Jordan Peterson. The fact that he was a bright shining light in the face of all of this nonsense, he, she, pronouns, and this. I mean, if you have a question about something happening in the world, there's probably a talk that you can listen to of Jordan Peterson that at least makes sense for non-crazy people. I've read his books, but he got up there and all he had to do was preface it with like, hey, I'm going to show you how my mind works. I'm going to take you through my thought process. He didn't. And then the moderator, who I wish I'd been the moderator, because I would have been like, I don't even know what you just said. Can you help us decipher some connectivity, some form of partition this to be able to give people, when they ask them tomorrow, you heard Jordan speak, what did he speak about? And he didn't. The moderator was like, oh my God, this was the most amazing thing, like fangirl. And I was like looking around and I was like, shit. Like, it was kind of a little bit of an Emperor's New Clothes moment in such a way. And I felt that people were there because they wanted to say that they heard Jordan Peterson speak in person. It was like a cultural thing more than anything. So I'm a huge fan of his. He's extremely authentic. And that's why people were cheering, not for what he said that night, but what he's done over the past X amount of years. I mean, every time I've heard him on Joe Rogan, he answers a question that I'm like, man, that's excellent. I had a question about that, and he kind of couched it in a certain way that made sense. But for him speaking in person, it was verbal masturbation, and people cheered. So that kind of got me really kind of noodling on this authenticity piece. And if you go back and let me see what it's called. I can't remember the name. It's called self-determination theory is kind of where I pulled that piece. But the idea that people are authentic when the actions reflect their true and core self. That is when they are autonomous and self-determining. So that's kind of where I pulled from that. But the idea that, authenticity and truth are so paramount. And I think what you're seeing in this present fitness climate is a lack of inauthenticity, or sorry, that's a double negative, is inauthenticity or a lack of authenticity.
Yeah.
Where people, I'm just going to take a bunch of like booty short ass pictures and post a link for my program, my, glute booty builder summer program, and hoping that, guys are going to pay $20 to buy my program or $13 for my OnlyFans. I mean, that's really where we're kind of at in this deal, where they're not necessarily selling knowledge. They're not necessarily selling betterment. They're just selling access and, some weird softcore porn, who knows? But there's very few people that are experts, and the good ones, I know. I mean, I was with Cal Dietz this weekend, who's an absolute monster in this thing, and answered questions for me that plagued me for 20 years. And it's really great to be around those type of individuals that are intelligent, that train athletes, that are solving problems, that are looking for different pieces to solve this. And there's just not a lot of those people out in the world, because there can only be so many experts. If everybody's an expert, nobody would be an expert. And I think for me, I tend to associate and look for the people that are the best in the world at what they're doing. I couldn't tell you what 99.9% of the rest of the fitness world is doing, because I just don't care.
And I want to see if you notice this too, but in this ocean of inauthenticity,
Isn't it a tough
or
word?
God, man, it's brutal. I don't know if it's just Monday morning or not, but
Yep.
in this kind of sea that we're seeing, this rise of general narcissism and things like that, right? Do you feel like those who are looking for authenticity are almost more powerfully pulled to the people who are the real deal? Like it's almost like that attraction is there's less of them, but they're stronger. Would you say that's something that you've seen?
I think we've never been in a time in history, at least in my life, where people are searching for intelligent people to listen to and to lead them. I mean, it's like, let's give you a fair example, right? Like during COVID, I had this conversation with somebody about this. I'm a fan of history, especially U.S. history. And, my dad, who since passed away, was really smart, like real smart, like 140 plus IQ smart. And he read a ton of presidential autobiographies, and he was just read a ton. And he knew Richard Nixon. So when he was a young lobbyist in Sacramento, he had the opportunity to meet Richard Nixon, and he told me he's like probably the most intelligent person he'd ever met. So Richard Nixon, being the most popular president we'd ever elected, and one of the smartest people, that hubris kind of got him a little bit. So he gets elected to office. He starts asking questions because he wants to know, who assassinated Kennedy. The guy two before him got killed, and nobody ever, the Warren Commission, all that. I mean, we started investigating that. Next thing you know, two of his guys get popped in that Watergate thing for stealing something that they didn't need. They were already going to win the election. And unbeknownst to him, they come to him, you got to cover this up. So they give him bad advice. Bob Woodward, who had been a naval officer, an intelligence officer, goes over to the Washington Post. His first assignment is, this, conspiracy with the president, deep throat and the whole deal. I mean, and my dad's contention was they got Richard Nixon out of there, and they basically crippled that guy because he asked the wrong questions, and there was such a deep state associated with it. They got rid of Agnew on tax evasion shit, and then they basically brought in a president who had never been elected. So, I mean, like that type of stuff, right? I'll just give you an example, right? So you got a Kennedy assassination, they get rid of Nixon. I mean, this has happened over the last 50 years. So, we've been lied to with the Iran-Contra stuff. I mean, weapons of mass destruction. Why if Osama bin Laden bombs us, do we go into Iraq? I mean, like it's all of these questions, right? And if you ask them, oh, you're being un-American, we have to fight the war on terror, right? That like is the most open-ended checkbook I've ever seen. And really, wars of occupation are about transversal wealth. So we have like 50 years, the failed Bay of Pigs. I mean, you look at this thing over the cascade of history, and then all of a sudden COVID hits, and the very people that we know have been clandestine in this whole deal, now all of a sudden they're going to be truthful for us. And so when people ask me about the COVID thing, I'm like, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but the people that are preaching this at the loudest soapbox, I can go back. I mean, if you read the CIA's Legacy Ashes, I mean, I can go back and show you an account of this thing. I mean, the CIA pretty much came out, what was it, during COVID? It was like, yeah, no, we have aliens and we assassinated Kennedy. Nobody even batted an eyelash. Like, so now all of a sudden, here we are 4 years later, and they're like, yeah, well, we shit on ivermectin, and we made that bad because if there was anything on the books that could treat it, then they couldn't get their emergency exemption for the vaccine. So they had to do a disinformation campaign. And I saw Chris Como being like, they just didn't tell me. No, he was a propaganda. I mean, so I think the problem is not to say that COVID doesn't exist and it's not this, but I think the problem and the message from these people for the most disingenuous, most untrusting people, the Rachel Maddow of the world, who anything that comes out of her mouth, I'll just do the opposite, right? The most disingenuous people on the planet are over there, like The View and this. I mean, it's almost like not a single person that I would ever spend a minute of my life with are the people that are beating this at the loudest drum. So it's just, I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means, but I'm also not a fool. And I think the issue, and I'll go back to IQ again, big part of the population has an IQ of less than 85, and, somewhere, 10% or some has less than 75, which means that, pretty much they're intelligent enough to watch paint dry. And I think when you're dealing with a lot of people that just aren't very intelligent, it's easier to cull them. It's easier to use fear to manipulate and push than it is to actually provide the right information. And then I look at it and I'm like, man, this seems like bullshit. So I think in the fitness world, even more, the more glitz and glamour and the more nonsense it is, the more I'm like, who are these people? All of a sudden, somebody you've never heard of, you're like, that guy's got 250,000 followers on Instagram. I never even heard of this person. And then you look and you're like, what athletes do they train? Who do they work with? I don't work with. I've never even heard of these people. And I've been doing this a long time. So I think it just comes down to, like, we had Vince from V-Shred on the podcast. Awesome dude. He had 3 buddies that were marketing guys. They wanted to market a abs routine to make a little extra drinking money on the weekends, and knew nothing of strength conditioning. I built a juggernaut program because they were just better at marketing. He's gone back and since had to learn all this stuff, but he was like, when I started, I didn't know any of this stuff. It just goes to show you that if you are good at marketing, you can get pretty far. I almost tell people if they want to get in the strength conditioning world, figure out the marketing piece. You don't even need to teach anybody anything. You can just batch yourself with others' ideas. The problem though, if you go too far, you're going to get into some bullshit and then you're going to get called out by people. Because when you start propagating ideas that aren't your own, then all of a sudden now it just looks bad.
It's funny. I keep getting hit with YouTube ads for V-Shred constantly.
Dude,
And
you're the demographics, dude. They pour so much money into retargeting ads and this and V-Shred. I mean, they run 90 ads a month. I mean, they are constantly, like I got on the call with them, fucking wizards with, direct to consumer marketing and selling programs. I mean, their demographics, Midwest, 35-year-old women who are looking to, get in shape. So we have a completely different demographic, but it was fascinating being like, fuck, I wasted my time being a professional athlete and training people. I should have just learned marketing.
yeah, it is true. I mean, I think of our industry is specifically like people want the quick fix. They want the pill. They want, they don't want the long journey. At least that's what they think they want. Right. So the marketing is so critical. Like I remember like 4 years ago looking at whenever V-Shred came out and we were looking at the campaign and like what Noom did in their campaigning, it was just marketing genius really in so many ways. And yeah, it's a fundamental piece. If you want to have a successful business is to really invest in marketing. It's critical. I know we only have a few more minutes here.
I'll pull up that Bob Woodward. No, I'll pull up that Bob Woodward thing because ironically I went to school with his daughter, so I met him. She came and spoke, but he was a naval intelligence officer. Got out of the military, got admitted to Harvard Law School. Never went to get a job at the Washington Post. They let him go because he didn't have any experience. Went to go work for the Montgomery Sentinel for a little bit. And then came back with Woodward and Bernstein were both assigned to report on the June 17th, 1972 burglary of the headquarters of the DNC in Washington. So literally his first real assignment was probably one of the biggest things. I mean, and then I forgot who Deep Throat was. He was he has access to Deep Throat, who was a pseudonym given to the secret informant who provided information in 1972 to Bob Woodward. Bob Woodward, and it was identified as former top FBI official Mark Felt. I mean, so his informer, he was a naval special officer, and the top guy in the FBI was their informant. I mean, come on, like Nixon got fucking railroaded, and my dad said it. He told me, he's like, dude, he's the most popular president, and I mean, this is just the power. So and not to say, like I said, not to say COVID, I'm not a COVID denier in any way, but I like when the people giving me the information, I have 50, 60 years of just nothing but bullshit. You're like, yeah. So, and then now you think it's such a different world where information is being manipulated to us, whether it be in fitness or health. I mean, Rob Wolf, probably one of the most impactful people in terms of health and fitness. Shit, that dude pops his head up. He probably gets deplatformed just because he's like, eat meat, lift some weights, be in shape, don't be a fat ass. I mean, like, like they went after Rob, so bad. And like, he was like enemy number one. Why? Cause he was, it's interesting to say the least. I mean, we are in interesting times where, we're in such an interesting nanny state where most of these people are pushing a lot of their ideas in fitness on, Facebook and Instagram. And those are private entities that are controlled. And and if you're not telling me Zuckerberg doesn't have a direct line, I mean, we saw during the election that the White House was calling and basically deplatformed this person. They got deplatformed. I mean, like, so now you have this mixing. It's a wild world we live in. And I remember I did a speaking engagement years ago in Denver. I was doing we picked up a client. We're doing some corporate wellness for a guy named Bill Bradley. So I went to go give a talk for his C-suite and all those people. And I talked a little bit about statins and cholesterol, and more importantly, Ansel Keys' 7-country study. 1959, they come out and they vilify saturated fat for heart disease. 6 months later, they disprove it, but nobody told the medical industry or told doctors. So, and you would have thought that I had told this lady that Elvis was still alive. What do you mean that there's no correlation between heart disease and saturated fat? Like my doctor, it's like, dude, I don't know what to tell you. So, where this thing is headed, I think you're always going to have noise. You're always going to have people entering this thing in and out. They get in, they make a little bit of money, and then they go get a job as a mortgage broker. They get out of that. Next thing you know, they get into this. I mean, there's always going to be these transient people that jump in and out of this industry. I think it's the people that can really deliver a good boutique experience that's intelligent, easy to execute, that's not fraught with nonsense and bullshit. I think those people will be the ones that survive for a long time.
And that's the question when I asked you, John. And I don't disagree with anything you've said. I mean, over the years of COVID years, it was a dangerous time. I mean, I've lost some of the closest relationships I have.
Yeah, me too.
There's always a chance that they'll come back, right? But just because I didn't understand, I'm like, I don't understand if I get invited into your house, why do I have to wear a mask when I'm over here?
I weld,
10 feet away, but then I get to take it off at the dinner table.
So, dude,
it was just little thing.
It's crazy. I weld and I fab. I build trucks, and I wear like an N95 mask to when I grind. I got a respirator, and the reason I got a respirator was N95 masks do not work. You get done grinding, and I have so much metal and dirt in my nose. So I mean, like the fact that a COVID molecule, which is like 100 or 1,000 times smaller, whatever it is, than the smallest piece of something that you can recognize. And somehow this is going to get me. Like, I don't know. It was such a weird time and it was so polarizing. My favorite was always like, oh, you have to trust the science. Want me to read the science? No. You don't have the ability to understand the science. You just have to trust it. And there was a comedian made a funny comment. He'd be like, that would be like, if you go to buy a car, I'm going to research it. Don't do it. Just trust the salesman. The salesman will steer you wrong. Don't do any research on the car. Just trust the salesman. He's the expert. You don't know shit about it. Just buy the car. Let's do it. So no, like nobody does that shit. So it just was a really interesting time. And Jordan Peterson had a great point where he goes, I think in Nazi Germany, everybody had this idea that they would be Schindler. And he goes, what COVID taught us, like, that's not the case. Most people are racing to turn in their neighbors. Most of the people were happy to fall into line. And there's just a very, very small percentage of the population that looks up and is like, this is bullshit. I'm not doing this. And I was depressed that so many people were so easily cold through fear and weren't willing to look at it intelligently. And yeah, it's an interesting thing, and just more and more information keeps coming out on it. So, I mean, I think we saw pre-COVID, at least I did, you said it earlier, we saw this kind of like abandoning of like the Globo gym, and people were putting weights in their garage, and then all of a sudden COVID hits and the gyms close and people are building these, garages. COVID restricts and everybody was selling all their stuff on Marketplace. And I was like, I'll never not have a garage gym. Like we have so, and now, people explode. We were in, like I said, South Carolina this weekend on Friday. We got up early and went over and trained at this place. The place was packed Friday morning at like 8:00. Big kind of, it'd been a former Gold's Gym, but the place was packed. And I was like, shit, there's this many people that aren't working on a Friday morning. So
yeah, awesome, man. John, this has been a lot of fun, dude. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time, and yeah, definitely made my week throwing Monday, and I'm great. Feel like I've had a successful week. This is the last question I always generally ask, but as an industry, people who are listening, like, what's a challenge you're facing that we can help you with right now? People are going to reach out to you. What would you like to hear from them about?
Challenge that people are having. I think people have to be able to navigate, if they're kind of looking for, hey, I want to follow this training program, or I'm looking for this. I think one of the hallmarks of a quality program is really community. If you can follow a program and they have some community aspect, whether it be like we do a Discord or a Facebook or something where you can kind of get into it, I think that's what's paramount. I think you have to really look for that. I think just the days of selling a program and sending them a PDF and telling them to go fuck themselves. I think that's over. And I think that's shitty business. And I wouldn't want to be associated with that. I like the ability to kind of lead people on this journey and like see how they do and really just, watch them, come into maturity. Hopefully, people stay longer than, 6 weeks. And, like we said, we have people for years. And like I said, I was at Sornix this weekend, ran into a ton of people that follow the program, came over and said hi. And I said on the Discord, hey, come say hi. I'm happy to talk to everybody. I think I shook too many hands and that's why I'm feeling a little down and out, but it was worth it.
Awesome, man. And if there's a place you want people to go online, reach out to you, whatever it may be, what would you like them to do?
Just powerathletehq.com. You can find me at social at John Welbourn or Power Athlete Inc. on social.
Right on, man. John, thank you for joining me Monday morning. And yeah, man, hopefully a little handshaking doesn't get you down. But
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, John Welbourn.